Hello, everyone. How are you doing today? Today is August 3rd, and we are talking about why are setting boundaries important in self love. So, I am going to just give it a few seconds here to see if anybody comes on. Today, I am live on Facebook and Instagram. So, of course, as always, if you see my eyes kind of going back and forth, you know why. But welcome to Unapologetically, the self love movement. And let's see if anybody joins. Feel free to comment as well, that letting us know that you are here and talking about the topic, right? Because it's kind of a big one. It's pretty big. So let's see who joins on today. Okay. All right. So first things first, when it comes to boundaries, I want to make sure that we know what boundaries are, right? There's been a time or two, or a few actually, in sessions where we've talked about boundaries, and people are like, hey, what is the difference between boundaries? What is healthy boundaries versus what is unhealthy boundaries? Because when we grow up, we know what we know, and based upon what we were taught by our caregivers, sometimes by school, and whoever else is teaching us. So we're kind of going with the flow of what we think it is, and some of us may not know exactly what it is and what it entails and what's healthy versus unhealthy. So today I'm going to just break down the difference between certain boundary styles, and as well as talk about why it's important to the self love journey. So let's talk about rigid boundaries, right? There's three different styles of boundaries. Boundaries define what is acceptable and what is not in any relationship. This just doesn't just have to do with an intimate relationship. It is any relationship that you have. It could be with your coworkers, your boss, could be with your parents, it could be family members, as well as intimate relationships. It can be with your your children, your siblings, so forth, right? Any relationship that you have, it's important to have boundaries. So here are three different types of boundaries. Number one, let's talk about porous boundaries. So porous boundaries lets almost anyone get close to them. It's something where when you have a relationship, you're just allowing people to come into your personal space, not only physically, but emotionally, mentally. You let anybody get close to you, and that is okay with you. You're overly trusting of others, even strangers. You overshare personal information, have difficulty saying no to others. You're overly involved in others' problems, quick to adopt others' opinions, avoid conflict by giving in to others, does not assert personal values, and communicates passively. That is porous boundaries. You kind of let anybody in. Um, you have a hard time saying no. You you try to avoid conflict, so you give in. You communicate more on a passive level versus learning how to assert yourself, right? And these are all things that typically when I have my clients, I pick some of these things up from therapist aid, and just worksheets that help break down things visually. So let's talk about the next one. It's called rigid boundaries, right? Where you keep most people at a distance. You're very trusting of others, very guarded with personal information. You say no to others most of the time, detach from others' problems. You tend to ignore others' opinions, avoid conflict by pushing others away, has inflexible personal values. So this is my value. It is what it is. I'm not moving for anybody. And you communicate aggressively. And aggressively means like a lot of times there's this tone or a volume to someone's communication, or it's very harsh. And direct and harsh to me can be different things. I can speak directly, but it doesn't mean it's aggressive. Like very stern or almost attacking in a sense. And then there's healthy boundaries. There's selective about whom to let in and keep out. Takes time to build trust with others, shares personal information appropriately, able to say no when needed, supports others without being too involved, values both own and others' opinions, and accepts conflict as a normal part of life, stands by personal values but can adapt, and communicates assertively. So you're not being pushy about the way you communicate. Um, you're not only going to say, here's how I feel about something and here's the values and morals that I have, but you're going to be open to hear the other person's personal values and thoughts and opinions just as well, because you realize you're not the only one on this planet and that other people have other values and morals and opinions and beliefs, okay, based upon how they grew up or how they were raised. And you may not necessarily agree with it, which is cool. But we all have that, right? And when it's healthy, you learn to say, okay, so you have your own opinion and thoughts about things. It doesn't always have to be my way, or it can't be always my way, right? So when you start learning what your boundary style is and becoming more aware of that, you want to basically ask yourself, what is it that I want for myself? Am I okay with porous boundaries? Am I okay with just letting anybody in and overly trusting of people and not being able to say no? And what I've learned about people who have porous boundaries as well is that they have a hard time setting boundaries. And when they do set boundaries and say, hey, that didn't feel good to me, I don't want that, a lot of times they won't follow up. So follow up is very hard for them to do because they have yet learned how to be assertive and stick with that. So therefore, they're being inflexible or they're being flexible with their boundaries. So a lot of times, no one's going to believe you. Most people are going to take advantage of you. These are a lot of times where the people pleasers come into play, right? Pleasing everyone, and doing all these things for people, knowing that they're overworked, they're overrun. They don't want to do something, but they're doing that. They're doing something because they feel like they have to, or they feel obligated to for some reason, or they feel like that if I do this, then you might change and give me what I want. But the reality is how can they give you what you want if you haven't vocalized it? And even if you vocalized it, you're not following through to really show them that is what you want. So they're going to think, you don't know what you want because you're allowing me to continuously step over what you say are your boundaries when I don't think you really know what your boundaries are, because you allow me to step over on them all the time. You say it, but then I'm able to essentially get what I want when I want because you don't follow through, right? These are people who are easily taken advantage of. We want to be cautious of that because it's hurtful. And what does that do to your self-love and your self-esteem? Well, it brings it down. This is the feelings that arise from I'm not good enough. I'm never heard, right? I always feel like I have to be there for people, but who is really there for me? And how can someone be there for you if you're not there for yourself in that capacity? Right? So these are the things that I want you to be aware of on this self-love journey in building and setting those boundaries, is knowing what boundaries you actually want to implement and following up with that. Come through for yourself so that other people can come through as well. And if they don't come through and they're actually taking advantage of you, then you know that's a boundary you have to set for them. And sometimes you need that release button. Let it go, right? Harder to do that with family than it is with friends or other people. Okay. And we'll get into that shortly. So then we have the rigid boundaries. A lot of times, what I have seen with people who are so rigid is that they've been hurt a lot and this is their traumatic response. So they're saying, nope, 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 nope. And they're trying to control or overly control their environment, because as long as I stay in my environment and I know what's going on, then no one can hurt me, right? And what ends up happening is that chances are along the lines they will get hurt. Why? Because life throws things at you, right? Unexpected things happen. And typically, what I have seen for those who have tried to control their life so much and control everything in their environment, that they tend to break down a bit. And they break down because they know they can't control everything in life, but they've tried to make it their life's work to control everything in life. That the reality is that they realize that their boundaries aren't adaptable. They're not adaptable to every situation, and resetting and adjusting certain boundaries to adapt to that new environment that actually might be good for you. They're just, whether something's good or bad, they're just saying no and just keeping it away, because if I happen to let that in and it's not good, then now I'm mad at myself. I'm disappointed in myself because I got hurt knowing I should have just said no, and I'm saying no to all things. So those boundaries are really, depending on the style that you have, can really kind of show up in character. And you could be the greatest person ever, but fear kind of takes over you, and you allow certain things to kind of come and go. So then we have those healthy boundaries where it's more, to me, it's more about listening to your intuition on whether or not you're going to set those boundaries. Like, when you hear that these things, what people are saying or what they're doing to you are not good, right? And you're just like, ooh, that's really negative, or that's toxic, or that's not the type of relationship that I want to be in, right? Again, this is any type of relationship. And when you are coming to grips as to trying to set that boundary with healthy people, or with healthy boundary setting people, right? They're going to, chances are they're just going to assert themselves and kind of say it in a casual way, yeah, I don't like that. Or, no, I can't work double time this weekend, right? Because some people feel like they owe it to somebody, or they want to look good, or they want people to like them, right? With people who set these healthy boundaries, for them, it's not a matter of like or not, it's the ability of what I can or cannot do, or feels good or does not feel good to me, right? If I have the capability of working this weekend, but I don't want to, then I'm not going to. And especially if it's not part of that job description, then yeah, I'm going to probably pass up on that. But if I feel like, you know what, that's not a big deal to me, I can do that, then yeah, sure, I'll do it. So boundaries are tough to accept. Boundaries are very tough to accept. Somebody said that in the comments, as well as being able to vocalize your needs. And again, a lot of this is from our caregivers, how we grew up, and if we were affirmed in that, right? So if I have tried to set boundaries and people have gaslighted me, right? Or people have said, maybe try to bully you into believing that that's not what they're doing, right? A lot of time, those type of people often manipulate the situation because it's not benefiting them. But once you've become closer to your core, who you are, and your feelings, and believing your intuition, and knowing that this doesn't sit well with me, you're going to want to learn how to assert yourself and say, yeah, that doesn't sit well with me. And although you're saying that that's not what you're doing, yeah, I'm feeling that's what you're doing. And they'll back, and a lot of times they will actually back off. They're just so used to you not setting and following through with things, and you believing what they say and going with it, that they might give you a little pushback, but that's because a lot of times that's already the pattern that you have created, right? You vocalized your needs. You may have vocalized your needs, but you didn't follow through, because the second time that they gave you pushback or gaslit you to believing that you're the crazy one, and what are you talking about? That's not what I'm doing. Then the reality is that you might fall back and you're like, but am I the crazy one? Or did they not do that? Or maybe I'm just looking at it the wrong way. Now you start second guessing yourself. And most people who manipulate know that's what you're going to do. So they're going to push back a little bit, because they're going to wait until you do fall back on your own boundaries, so that way they can get whatever they're looking for, what they want. Why is this so important to self-love? Because self-love is about you. Self-love is giving yourself that love, respect, showing your worth, all those things. And when you don't set boundaries for people in respecting who you are, and even for yourself, knowing what you want, your needs, knowing what you like and what you don't like, then you can't possibly show respect to yourself and how much you love yourself if you're allowing people to impede upon those boundaries. The tough part about setting boundaries and keeping there is that most of the people I encounter struggle with their family members. They struggle with not wanting to break the relationship with their family members, even though they know they are toxic or unhealthy, right? Because who really wants to say, hey, I don't want to have this relationship, or I can't have this relationship with a parent or with my cousins, because in reality, I may not have a lot of family members or friends that I can have support from. So it's almost like choosing one of, I know it's a harsh word, but choosing one of the evils, in a sense, to say like, well, I'm going to stay with this relationship because I feel like I have no one else. And continuously putting yourself in this predicament to not show yourself respect or not show yourself the love that you deserve. So then what happens when you actually get into intimate relationships is that if your partner shows those qualities of not showing you respect or not showing you love or manipulating your boundaries, the reality is that you constantly will go around your head actually starting to believe that you don't deserve the love, that what you're asking for in that respect and that worth and that valuing, you actually devalue yourself, because, well, if not only my family members disrespect my boundaries or impede upon them, and now my intimate partner is doing that, then it just must mean that it is me and that I'm not worth it and I'm not good enough. But those boundaries have to be set when it comes to your family members. They have to know that they are impeding upon your boundaries and your respect level, right? Regardless of who they are, as difficult as it is, it's not only following through and following up with it, but it's showing up for yourself, advocating for yourself, being there for yourself. And the people who are taking advantage of you are not going to like that. So naturally, they would get upset. They were the ones benefiting. So naturally, they're going to get upset with you. And sometimes you will find that they'll get upset with you because they're so used to getting their way. Some of them will come around and apologize, and some of them won't. And then you lose them, right? Hit that let go button. Release. Because someone has to stand up for you. Who's going to do that but you? Self-love is part of that process. Setting those boundaries and falling in line with how you want others to view you as well, and how they're supposed to treat you only is about you. So if I want to be treated in a certain way because I love myself and I value myself, then the reality is that I have to show up for me, and then therefore show everybody, well, this is what I'm going to take and this is what I'm not going to take. And if I'm not going to take that, I'm not going to take that. So you either accept the fact that this is who I am, I'm not going to take it, or you can go about your business, family or not. This is just what it is. And those who truly love you will show you that respect. They will show you that you are valued and that they care about you. It might take them time, especially if they've been doing this for so long. But with other people, like, hit that release, hit that let go button. Show up for you. Show people that you are determined and you are willing to let go of those who are not serving or aligned with who you are as a human being. Or you will spend the rest of your life devaluing yourself and in the bottom of the midst of everything, knowing that you are good enough, but are afraid to actually say it. You got to say these things. Say it out loud. Look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself that I love me, right? I'm fabulous. I'm amazing, right? Because when you do that and you affirm that to yourself, you can affirm that to the world. And then you don't feel much of anything else about showing up for yourself when you're setting those boundaries and letting go of the people who are not aligned with that and don't want to reciprocate the fact that you are of value. So someone asks, how can we teach boundaries to our kids? That's a big one. Great question. So number one, I will say, teach them the difference. So in this worksheet that I have, right, and maybe I'll post it up. I'll post it up online so you guys can see what I'm looking at. It actually has circles and it has positive and negative, and like porous goes into the circle, healthy has positive going in and negative bouncing away, and rigid has both of them bouncing away. So I can post this both online for you guys to see what I'm looking at. I think number one, showing them visuals, especially for kids, is super important because they are visual creatures, right? And we are too. Sometimes we need to see it, right? As well as it lists it, and you can have a conversation about some of those things and what they look like. It's going to be hard for you to set boundaries with kids if you are not setting boundaries for yourself. Muy importante. If you can say, no, you can't have that tablet because of X, Y, Z, and I am putting it away, right? What do most parents do when kids start tantruming, right? A lot of parents, because they don't want to hear the noise, will give back the tablet or whatever else they have because they don't want to hear it. That is poor boundaries. Poor boundaries, because whatever you just set are the rules and regulations. You just completely let them know that they can sit there and impede on your boundaries that you set, right? So your consistency is important in teaching them that these are the boundaries. Kids follow you to the bathroom. My damn dog follows me to the bathroom. It's being able to close the door if you can and saying, no, this is my privacy. Letting them know what's going on, because some parents don't talk to their kids. Like if they don't understand, and sometimes they don't understand depending on the age, but if you can start verbalizing what certain things are, eventually they'll get it. Kids are sponges. They will learn. They will absolutely learn. So I need my privacy. Give me a few minutes, right? Close the bathroom door. You cannot come in. I will come out when I am done. That is a boundary, right? When you are doing something, not only saying, here's here's what I want or do not want you to do, you are actually following up on it. You're not like, okay, well, because you're kicking and screaming, I'm gonna no, because it's teaching them moving boundaries, right? Those moving boundaries. This is the boundary that I set. And because you are kicking and screaming, I'm going to move them and say, okay, sure. Why not? Just because I may not want to hear you, right? It is teaching them that it's okay to, number one, act up, right? So that way I can get my way, not understanding that no is no is no is no. I said no. That's it, right? And you're not going to get it. And I'm not going to move my boundary just because I don't want to hurt your feeling. Like, no, they need to start learning that there are things in life you're not going to always get. And most parents nowadays, and again, my kids are 18 and 20, so I'm far gone on this stage. But the reality is that the more we move it, the more we're kind of teaching them that in life it's going to be okay, because eventually you get what you want if you kick and scream for it. No, that's just not how life works. So you're either teaching them to succeed or you're teaching them to fail. And when you are teaching them boundaries, that means you are following through with your boundaries and being consistent about it, no matter how much you kick and scream, right? But I can teach you how to communicate. Man, I was really frustrated when you told me no. Yeah, I bet. I bet you were. Now, go use a coping skill. Go color, go draw so you can help calm yourself down, right? Because that is appropriate communication. That is appropriate coping skills to use. Kicking and screaming is not going to always get you what you want. But if you can't show up for your boundaries and be consistent about it, it's going to be really difficult for you to teach your children that. So show up for yourself, you show up for them too. Speak to them about speak to them about what you're doing and the boundary that you're setting, so that they can actually learn how to follow through and they know the verbiage behind that, right? That doesn't feel good to me, so no, I'm not going to do that. That feels okay for me, so okay, yes, I can do that. Are any other comments or questions regarding boundaries that people would love for me to talk about? Definitely, I'm open to it. Just looking in the chats. Okay. Yep. Okay, cool. So yeah, so learning again, and when it comes to kids or whoever else it is, then you would also start teaching them that self-love naturally, because then they'd be able to advocate for themselves as they grow up. Again, growing up back in my day, nobody talks about boundaries. And yet, in fact, the boundaries were very different, right? Do as I say, not as I do. What? Keke? What, what is that, right? But it's just not just how the generations worked, right? And again, we're trying to teach ourselves what is what and what do these things mean, because now we're learning that certain things don't feel good, and we have learned to just deal with it, right? Somebody had mentioned work bullying, right? That's so big. That is so huge, because a lot of us in our time, in our generation, we stayed when stuck with the work, because in reality, a lot of us were taught that you had to stay at something regardless if you liked it or not. Nowadays, people are learning that, number one, it's not really good to stay at this is what I'm learning, right? Good to stay at a job for a long period of time, for like years and years and years, because it doesn't show that you can actually be flexible in what you do. You're not learning anything new, right? So when an employer sees that you've been at a job for 20 plus years, they're thinking, so what else do you know how to do? Because you kind of created your own box of skill set, right? Unless you're with a company that had different things that you can do. I was with the company for almost 10 years, and I enjoyed the company because I was able to do so many different things in the company that my skill sets varied, right? I wasn't just a therapist. I was supervisor. I worked, alongside DCF, and I was a consultant. I did this, I did that. So there were so many different things that I did that if I after that I ended up going to my own practice. But if I didn't and I went to another job, I can be very adaptable because it showed that I had a variety of skill sets and I can do a lot of things, right? So when we are setting boundaries at work, a lot of times our fear is, am I going to get fired and I need this check? If you feel like you've advocated for yourself at work and say, I really didn't like how this such and such happened, and you felt like your boss wasn't appropriately following through, instead of staying, maybe it's about time that you find another job, right? Or there you cannot actually go up, right, the ladder or the chain of command and say, yeah, I didn't like the follow through on that. I didn't feel heard. I didn't feel supported. And this is why. And now I have my documents because I'm definitely keeping documentation of whatever it is, regardless if we're on the phone or if we're in person. Per our conversation or per that telephone conversation or per the in-person meeting, whatever it is, right? This is what I got from it or what have you, right? But when you go up the chain of command, then you start letting people know that you do have boundaries and there are some things that you're actually going to advocate for. Or what does that employee manual say? Most of us probably don't read the full employee manual because it just be too many pages. But when you start looking for those sorts of details and things, you are advocating for yourself and therefore setting boundaries. So, and some of us have that fear that I need this job for the money, right? So you're either going to step away and say, okay, I'm going to find another job, or you're going to make sure you go up that chain of command in order to advocate for yourself. Sometimes things are just unhealthy and you have to make the point to press that let go button and release it because it no longer serves you. And if that's in an unhealthy work environment, will reflect upon you, right? You will feel it. It would make you feel sad. It will give you you will have a hard time waking up in the morning respecting the job because you still have to go. So allow yourself to release it and know that it is time to go. Just like a relationship. If the relationship is not serving your needs, don't stay in it just because you don't want to go through the exhaustive effort of dating again. Stay by yourself. Learn to love you. Learn to be okay with being by yourself. And maybe you could actually align with someone who is on your level, will give you the things that you need or and want in a relationship versus just staying with someone hoping and praying that they'll change because they keep impeding upon your boundaries. They don't have to change because you keep accepting it, right? Love yourself. Show up for yourself. Set boundaries for yourself. Know what you want and follow through and be consistent with it. Okay? I hope today helped a little bit or give you something to think about when it comes to setting boundaries. Feel free to comment, ask questions, and I will respond to them as things may come up for you as you hit replay on this video. I will see you all back in 2 weeks as we talk about the next part of self-love. And if you have any topics that you'd like to talk about for Topic Thursdays, then let me know. And I'll definitely, hop on the live and we can talk about it. Okay. All right, everybody. I will see you in 2 weeks. Bye.